So, I've been pretty open about this on this channel here, that I am autistic. Now, I know for some people that can be unbelievable because people don't necessarily have an understanding about autism unless you actually have it. There's certain parts of the spectrum that you fall under. Now, I don't necessarily know where on the spectrum I fall under. I just know that I have been diagnosed with it, and it's played a big part in my life with different things, especially school when they put you in the quote-unquote special ed classes. And to me, that's always been kind of offensive to me because it makes people with autism and others just feel like they're not smart, like they're almost idiots in some sort of way, when that's not the case. Most of the time you'll realize, especially with me, we can be a little slow at times, and sometimes we have to learn things differently than others, or maybe have something explained to us differently. Like, basically, the way I like telling people to explain things to me is dumb it down the most you can, because that's pretty much the only way I'm probably going to understand. None of the scientific BS or just anything else. If you want me to go get something, you need to be specific as to where it is, or else I probably just won't end up finding it because I'll end up confusing myself in some way. And although that's frustrating to some people, it can definitely be understanding when people look it up and they realize, oh, this is what autism is. He's not stupid, he just, can't really get all that in a short span of time and needs it said to him in a different way. And one thing I had been seeing, especially the past couple of years, is literally this article I'm reading. It's from 2021, but I saw a lot of this last year, was people were making a trend out of faking these mental illnesses, including autism. A lot of the other stuff included dissociative identity disorder, eating disorders, and even borderline personality disorder. So that's pretty scary, along with Tourette's. I knew someone with Tourette's, and it's not really funny, especially to the person that has it. And he didn't have the Tourette's where, he, is screaming out curse words or whatever, but you can tell when he was ticking, because, he would kind of, like do that thing with his neck. He was very, very quiet, too, so, it wasn't anything that got in his way or anybody else's way, and I feel like when someone takes advantage of something like that, it's kind of like that episode of South Park where Cartman finds out about Tourette's, and he wants to, be diagnosed with it so that way he can get away with just blurting out obscenities in school, and by the time he, ends up saying this stuff and actually being diagnosed with it, his lie starts to catch up with him, and he starts, like, telling his deepest, darkest secrets.
One time, my cousin and I touched wieners! Ah! You and your cousin touched wieners?
That's just South Park being South Park, and I always find that episode hilarious because I'm like, yeah, this is what people who fake mental illness seem to be like. At first they understand, but then they never fully do their research, and by the time they get caught up in their lie, it just always comes back to bite them. I remember too, not that long ago, there was a woman who faked having cancer just so she, can get attention online. And even though she's been saying, I've been going to treatment, this and that and the other, it was a proven fact, especially by the hospitals that she said she went to, that she did not have cancer. At least she went to those hospitals, but when they tested her for the cancer, there was none. And, I've always just thought that that's a really scummy way to do things. It doesn't necessarily glorify the mental illnesses, but just the fact that people can take advantage of that because they know they're going to get some sympathy. It's always been something to me. And this article here I found at VoiceBox, I think sums it up pretty well. The first paragraph is basically, them saying, like, we've all faked being sick at one point in time to get out of school. I mean, I know I have, but it doesn't compare to what these people on, it's usually TikTok, are doing when they fake these mental illnesses. As it says, some people that rush you get from a fake illness hasn't gone away. Recently, we've seen young communities on social media take their acting skills up a notch to pretend that they have serious mental disorders or learning disabilities. These include borderline personality disorder, Tourette's, dissociative identity disorder, eating disorders, and autism. Of course, the obvious question here is, well, why? Why would someone want to pretend to have a life-threatening mental illness or learning disability that may have been oppressed for their whole lives? Glamorizing mental illness isn't a new concept on social media. Tumblr was the first to do it with blogs dedicated to posting gory images of depression and eating disorders. And then the writer of this article says that they had an eating disorder themselves, so, they were kind of into that kind of stuff, but now they're just realized it was like, oh, that was kind of cringy back back in the day because now they know that it was people taking advantage of the eating disorder. Social media has moved on since then. It's no longer a small community of people consuming anonymous imagery, but is instead real personalities romanticizing mental illness and learning disabilities by actually pretending they suffer from them. It's arguable that this new obsession is because social media users enjoy the positive reinforcement from others. After all, if the craze is something many want to be a part of, what better way than to receive confirmation from online friends that your performance is convincing enough? TikTok alone, the hashtag DID, dissociative identity disorder, has 1.2 billion views. I don't have dissociative identity disorder, so I can't sit here and say I don't know what it's about, but I can tell you people who are using it to, I guess, profit off of it or, get some sympathy in one way or another. It's a shit thing to do. It's like I said, I'm mainly focusing on the people who fake, having autism because I have it myself and I can speak for it and whatnot. That I can't speak much for. So if there is somebody who's watching this that does suffer from dissociative identity disorder, let me know how you actually feel about it. I mean, obviously you're gonna feel fucked up about it because someone is faking this mental illness that you have and using it for their own clout. But like overall, how does it affect, your life in general? Because like I said, with people faking being autistic, it seems like everybody always, has to make it out like, oh, okay, so just act stupid in one way or another. And it's just not how it is. I mentioned it before in a video about autistic representation in movies, how they never seem to get it right because they always seem to go off the stereotypes and they never seem to, talk to people or get information from people who actually suffer from the illness themselves. It's just kind of, Hollywood saying, oh, okay, well, we'll do this, set awareness, and that'll be that. It's like that Sia movie that came out. I think it was, if it wasn't ADHD, it had something to do with autism, and I have ADHD too, so that was kind of like, Sia was pushing it there. That's all I'll say about that. Overall, I think the reason I wanted to make this video and talk about it was because I want people to know, especially, people with the mental illnesses that we mentioned here. So I know I keep saying mental illnesses here, but I meant disorder. I don't know, my brain knows what it wants to say, but the complete opposite comes out. Mental illness in this fashion is kind of more offensive in a way, so the correct term is disorder. Have been diagnosed with it, and someone myself who is autistic and others who are autistic, that you are just as much of a person as everybody else. You are not dumb, you are not a failure, you are you, and you might be a little different than everybody else, but that's okay. I think that's what makes people unique, is we're all different from each other in one way or another. Sure, we might have, some of the same interest and all this kind of stuff, or maybe there is somebody out there that definitely does look like you, but there's billions of people on this earth, and just because somebody has something that maybe slows them down a little bit, or, they suffer from this, that, and the other, that doesn't make them any less of a human than they are already. It just means that they're a person with something that, it's not, I don't want to say holding them back like it's, a bad thing. I'm just saying it's holding them back for the sheer fact that others who don't have it don't seem to understand what the illness is about. I mean, when I was diagnosed with ADHD and autism in the 4th grade, this was back when schools were kind of just starting to really figure out how to work it, and even that still wasn't a good system. Again, I got put in the special classes because, well, I mean, I guess maybe they thought I was just dumb when really I was just slow. There was only one teacher ever that actually understood what I, was going through and what I had, because his brother, shout out to this teacher too, I want to say him by name because he was just so good to me that I feel like, he was also my football coach, so it also kind of, corresponds with that. Coach Eric Updegrove, when I went to Kennerdale High School, was very open and was very understanding with, me having autism, because I can't remember if it was older brother or younger brother, but his brother had autism as well. So he kind of knew how to deal with somebody on the spectrum, and he was always so helpful to me. And when I told him in class, because I had a couple of his math classes, when I told him, hey, you need to dumb this down for me, he would do it, and he'd be like, you know, the way I taught you, that's a little bit more complicated. You don't have to do that on the test. I know the school will say you got to do it a certain way, but he would always tell me, just do it whatever way you're comfortable with, and I will count it as correct if you get it correct. I'm not going to mark it wrong because the school wants you to do this BS. He's like, if this works for you, you do it. And he was just always so patient with me, and I was always able to appreciate that. Whereas I feel like what the school was trying to do was trying to get me to rush the do things, or they wanted me to do it the way the school wanted people to do things, not understanding that it just wasn't easy for me to do it that way or get it that way or whatever, and it always ended up making me not necessarily fail, but probably underachieve a little bit more than I should have in school. Granted, I did have problems in school, like with procrastination and stuff. That's more my fault than anything else. But I would still, be a B, C average student when I probably could have been an A, B student. I probably could have been a recurring honor roll student if it wasn't for the school constantly, messing around with me and, just messing around with trying to experiment with all this other stuff to help out people who were autistic or whatever you were back then. I mean, granted, I'm glad I grew up with something, because if you grew up in the 70s and 80s, which is, when my parents grew up, if you had autism, you were just seen as dumb and, you were just put in the same classes, but you didn't get any help at all. It was almost kind of just like pushed away. So I'm glad with the progress that we're making here, and I'm glad that more people are coming to an understanding, but I hate the fact that we have these platforms where we see how people will be willing to fake anything just to gain clout, and if that includes some mental illnesses and disorders, then that's what they're going to do. And again, I think it's very shit if you do something like that. It's just kind of, it shows the type of person that you are, and it really paints a bad example for people who actually have said whatever you're faking that you have. It doesn't help their cause anymore than it does. So that's all I have to say about this. I'd really love to hear your opinions in the comments below. But until then, stay safe out there, be yourself no matter what, and I will catch you all in the next one.
I just want to thank everyone for coming. My cousin and I touched wiener. Winter is a cold time of year.